Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bunker Show. Coming to you live and direct from the sewers beneath Westminster, where we're going to be asking a few of the questions that the establishment doesn't usually want asked. And joining me in the bunker this evening is our ray of sunshine. Here's Helen.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm in the chat room. If you've got any questions for our guests or any feedback or anything you'd like to say, nice to see a few of our regulars in there, as well as few new names. Really looking forward to the show.
And also in the bunker this evening, here's Jimmy.
Hi guys, nice to be back here as always. And yeah, it's been a very interesting week in the media actually. I've noticed a few things that kind of stood out, and one of the things that stood out was a little article in Private Eye regarding Simon Bunce.
Yeah, well, considering that that people like Nicholas Soames have been talking about whether people should sing the national anthem or not, when there are some much more serious questions that need to be asked about some of the things that Simon Bunce is putting forward in relation to Operation Ore.
Well, it was interesting because the Private Eye article focused on some military shenanigans that he'd been raising and whistleblowing about, but didn't mention his situation with Operation Ore, nor any of the people that he's been talking about in regards to Operation Ore.
Because a little while ago, a few years ago, his computers were seized. No images were found on them because he was accused of downloading child pornography. Simon, an ex-RAF officer, he insisted on his innocence, and with the help from evidence he secured from American authorities, he was able to prove that his credit card had been cloned and then used in Thailand to access illegal child pornography sites at a time when he could prove that he was in the UK. The charges were subsequently dropped. But the Americans sent Bunce a list of people whose credit cards had been used to access child pornography. Now, Simon Bunce alleges that 7 prominent names were included on that list. 3 names he's already released so far, and those are Gary Glitter, otherwise known as Paul Gadd, Sir Nicholas Soames MP, and Lord Peter Mandelson. So those people really do have some serious questions to ask in light of that American evidence which was used to convict a number of people under Operation Ore. Now, Operation Ore was curtailed before the majority of the people that the investigation brought up were able to be prosecuted. So with the media focusing our attention on David Cameron's party tricks and whether Jeremy Corbyn sings the national anthem or not, maybe our attention should also be focused on the efforts to undermine police investigation, to undermine witnesses, and for people who still have serious questions to ask, like Sir Nicholas Soames MP, to be distracting us with essentially media hype.
Well, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because the actual media stories focusing on, whether Corbyn buttons his shirt up or not, or whether he sings "God Save the Queen," or like David Cameron's, Babe Pig in the City antics. They're all kind of really emotive, yet essentially banal topics. These guys. There's more important things in the world.
And it also raises a number of questions regarding David Cameron. Are members of the Tory party or elements within the Tory party attempting to leverage David Cameron with a small number of MPs able to undermine his majority? Or is it a message to David Cameron saying we can make you appear this ridiculous just by releasing this? If you don't follow our agenda in other ways, who knows what we may release? So, some of those questions I think should encourage us maybe to look into more of what the media don't want us to look at rather than what they do want us to look at.
I mean, yeah, let's open the back catalogue time, is it, David? This is what It's interesting, isn't it? Because you think about some of the other stories that are in the news at the moment, like the Syrian refugee crisis, which has been a crisis for quite some time now. They choose their time, don't they?
Well, often that's the case, and that's why a couple of weeks ago we had Anarchy, the editor of The Occupied Sun, and over this last few days they've released The Occupied Sun headlines. So if you're able to on YouTube at some point, it's about 5 to 10 minutes long, and it has a great breakdown of a lot of the headlines and a lot of the news that you don't see in the media. And when people do get the information, it empowers them to make better choices, which kind of leads us on to our guest this evening, who is for me a great inspiration and really has a huge amount of get up and go. And I'm glad she's got up and decided to join us in the bunker this evening. Our guest, Sarah Chalk. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Fabrice. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me along as your guest tonight.
It's our pleasure to have you here. You've done all kinds of different things that we'll cover through this evening. But how did you get started to stand up and say, actually, I'd like to do something about what's going on in the world around me?
Well, I think it was in me from quite a young age. My dad was a very staunch labour man and trade unionist, and he was always, I always remember him going on about how the bloody government are trying to do us over all the time. And so from quite a young age, I was used to that. And I think, when Thatcher was elected into power was sort of like, I was quite a lot younger then. And, gradually I started to realise that this so-called democracy that we live in isn't actually very democratic at all. And I think probably when I became really, really active as an activist was back in about the year 2000. So I guess I came to it quite late. And that was when I got involved in Worthing cannabis coffee shops with a lovely man called Chris Baldwin. And I suppose it went from there, really.
Chris is a very dynamic individual. He was, fortunately, he was on the Bunker show with us 3 weeks ago. And it's great to be able to get up and actually engage with people on the ground. And I first saw you do that with Occupy. So how did you become involved with that? Or was it something like the anti-war movement or?
No, it was really when Occupy came along. I think how I heard about it was probably via Facebook or Twitter. And I heard about the Occupy Wall Street movement in America. And, I don't know, something in me said, wow, this is something that I've really been waiting for. And I know that sounds corny, and I know a lot of people have said that before. But everything that Occupy stood for was sort of the ethos that I tried to live my life by, if you like. So when Occupy started, obviously I heard about Occupy London, and I looked around on Facebook and there was nothing local. So I decided to start a Facebook group called Occupy Worthing. And really the rest is history, because on the 15th of October 2011, I went along on my own to Steen Gardens in Worthing with a banner that said, "We are the 99%, and a flask, and just was willing to chat to people. And I went every day for about a fortnight. And then after that, I heard that Occupy Brighton were thinking of setting up a camp in Brighton. So obviously that became a great interest to me, because it was a lot more local for me to be able to get to than London. I've got a family. I've got quite a big family, and it wasn't easy just for me to totally up sticks and go. So, yeah, when the Occupy movement, and when I first went to Brighton, lovely sunny afternoon, Saturday afternoon, and there was a vote to decide whether to set up camp, and it was unanimously decided that yes, a camp was going to be set up. And I think, I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but I think probably a lot of people didn't realise what on earth we were getting into.
Yeah, I can remember that. I remember that day.
I mean, it was a very exciting day. It was there was a lot of great energy around, a lot of really good ideas, a lot of positive people, but it was actually quite hard work.
Well, you have the initial impetus from the people who have their ideas, who want to communicate, who'd like to help by running workshops and sharing their skills. But one thing which became quite evident was the reality on the streets of the number of vulnerable people and desperate people, and sometimes angry and people who've not had a fair run of it, who are in need of a bit of support. That was interesting to see that bandwidth of people coming together in the same place.
It was. I mean, I've actually experienced myself with a family member and myself many years ago being homeless. And to actually see at the Occupy Brighton camp the amount of vulnerable homeless people that there were was actually, even quite an eye-opener for me. And I know like 4 years down the line that problem has just got far worse. It was, again, I think that was one of the harder aspects, because as you say, like, there were some brilliant ideas. There were loads of people wanting to do really good workshops and that, but the main problem was the one that society or that our governments have turned their back on, and that was the homeless people. They needed a lot of support, and it did take up a lot of time.
And you also mentioned that actually a camp is hard work, very, very hard work, especially in the middle of a city. So there's often quite a lot of work at the camp. Now, the thing that surprised me was the number of people who were willing to, even when they were quite cold and quite hungry, who were willing to use the skills and time and energy that they have, or learn new ones, to actually make some of the infrastructure that helps keep a camp functioning and being able to do what it was originally set up to do.
Oh, most definitely. In fact, I would probably say that the majority of the people that put in a lot of the hard work of keeping the camp running were a lot of these homeless people. They wanted to feel part of something, and the fact that they were encouraged to be there and they were helped as much as people could help them, made them feel part of something. And I always remember sort of one of the guys building a kitchen from nothing, a few old pallets and a bit of glass that he got from somewhere, and building a most wonderful kitchen. And once people's skills were encouraged, as you say, people can do anything. Any of us can do anything. We just need a bit of encouragement along the way.
Well, don't you think, Sarah? Hi, this is Jimmy here.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hiya. Don't you think that one of the biggest, let me say, media-led misconceptions regarding the homeless is that they're feckless? Like you see in a lot of the press that, these people are there because of some fault of their own, or because of a gambling debt, or because of mental health issues. Where actually, a lot of people are out of the homes just purely down to practical reasons. Don't you think that there is a misconception that the homeless are feckless?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, there is a total misconception. And I would say to people, if you really think that about homeless people, go out and meet a few. Go out and actually introduce yourself. Go and take them a sandwich, a cup of coffee, a sleeping bag if you've got one. Go and say hi to a homeless person, and I guarantee you'll find that that's a very intelligent human being there. They are just, like you say, down on their luck in one way, shape or form. And that can happen to any of us. Even people that think they're really secure in their little lives, it can happen to any of us, Well,
that was interesting to hear people who, a month before were saying, you know, they had their own business, wife and 2 kids, and were you know, desperately seeing if we had a tent where they could lay their head. So, you know, when you actually come across those situations, it really is quite eye-opening. And if there's a level playing field, a place where people can do something constructive to help themselves, most people, when given the opportunity, will take it. And I think that's something which is very, very useful about alternative media, because on some of the mainstream, those things just are very, very coloured, as Jimmy was saying, and not so much in Brighton. But I know you've also done a certain amount of filming things that are happening on the front lines to help raise awareness. And so, do you think that some of the new tools that are around now, in terms of social media, live streaming, cameras on phones, do you think that can make a difference to how that dialogue with the greater public can be facilitated?
Yeah, I really think it can. I mean, most people blunder around totally unaware that they are captured on CCTV cameras most of the day, wherever they go around town. They're being filmed a lot of the time. Now, we have, like you say, these amazing tools, smartphones. I mean, a few years ago, I wouldn't have even known what a smartphone was. But they're amazing things. You can download very simple apps to enable you to live stream. And live streaming is just great because you haven't got to worry about editing anything. You haven't got to cut it. You haven't got to take it back to a studio and cut it down to a certain size. It is as it happens. And I found a few of the occasions that I've live streamed, they've been quite valuable. One of the first times I ever did live streaming was over at Brighton University, and it was when the students were coming out in solidarity with the food workers over there, and it was a very lovely day. There were loads and loads of students out, you know, exercising their right to protest, and suddenly police and security got incredibly heavy-handed and all hell broke loose, and I had to jump up on this big flower pot to get out of the way. But it was just, for me, it was something like the mainstream media doesn't show that angle of it. The mainstream media may show a little banner or something and then show the police fighting protesters, and then that's it, that's the end of it. Now, for me, live stream could be half an hour, it could be an hour, and it shows the whole picture. It can show the whole build up to what happens, it can show nice parts, it can show all kinds of things.
A lot of the time, you know, like on these news reports, you miss out on all this, you know, and this is the joy of live streaming, isn't it? You get to see the peaceful, nice interactions and the really positiveness of these groups and gatherings. And then suddenly you've got these bully boys showing up, you know, like taunting and causing problems.
Yeah, and in my experience, the police don't actually like live streamers very much. They don't like the fact that you're filming them behaving badly, because quite a lot of the time they are behaving badly. I'm talking purely from a point of view of somebody who goes to peaceful protests. I don't advocate violence in any way, shape or form, and I can honestly say that I think nearly every time I've seen the violence started by police, and I think it's good that we have these capabilities, these smartphones now, and we can live stream them. And you know, we're always hearing about our human rights being taken away from us more and more. All the time we've got them, we really need to use them. And you know, I'm no spring chicken. I'm not a young person. I'm not very techie savvy at all. Take it from me, it's really easy to do, and it's a really necessary job, especially, I would say, especially in the last couple of years, where we've seen more and more live streamers arrested. And I think that's because the police don't want their actions filmed, to be honest.
it's one thing that is quite clear is that when you have transparency in a situation, all parties generally behave better. And as opposed to video, which is again really, really useful, whether you're live streaming or whether you're videoing something, again, as long as that video doesn't get destroyed, which is one advantage that live streaming has, because it's there, it's on a remote location. It's not stored on, well, it is stored on your phone, but it's also replicated. So when you're in one of those situations where you can video somebody going about their business, as you said, there are CCTV cameras just about everywhere, but there is a shocking coincidence that when certain people's actions are questioned, often the authorities, that those videotapes go missing. And so if everybody has a copy of those videotapes live streamed or the recording live streamed, then it should hopefully serve to keep everybody safe. And I also think that I'm not sure if law enforcement really understand the concept of live streaming.
No, I don't think they do. I really don't think they do. I think they'll probably start to eventually, but I think they're not quite with it at the moment. So again, that's why we should use this. And never forget that the police are more and more equipped with their own video cameras these days, and they're quite quick to tell us that they're filming us. So
I was going to mention there, we had on the 5th of May show, I believe, we had Michael Doherty, who is a leading advocate for Lyon's Law, which is police officers, whenever they're engaging with the public, not at their discretion, but whenever they're engaging with the public and they wish to exercise their authority as a police officer, should be filming, should be live streaming it, except on occasions where they may be dealing with sensitive material and it's not appropriate. But those are very, very few and far between. So when we have that ability to record people independently and actions independently, it has in quite a few occasions made the difference when people have gone to court where action has been escalated. And often it makes the difference between somebody getting steamrolled and being convicted for something they haven't done and being able to provide the proof that somebody was lawfully exercising their democratic rights, so-called.
Sorry.
To your recollection, do you know if any live stream footage has been used in court at all?
I do believe some was. I can't remember totally off the top of my head, but I think it was at one of the anti-fracking camps. I think at Barton Moss. That was one of the court cases there. They used live stream footage, and the person got off.
Yeah. In terms of being able to keep people safe, because that's effectively what live streaming does. And I can't get the impression that you saw a gap. Once you see how live streaming can be effective and how people can really see what's going on, because it is unedited and because it is live, people have more faith in the communication, especially when the media is so manipulated and overproduced these days. So when you have live footage coming out, you can gain much more of a comprehension of exactly what is happening. And do you think that dynamic is, and also the fact that a lot of live streamers respond to the conversation that's going on? So, how did you go about sort of filling that space where you thought that I should live stream here?
Well, I think it was. I think what made me think it's essential. One part. Sorry, one part about live streaming, to me, that is essential, is the interaction you have with the people that aren't actually there. So in other words, with the people that are watching your live stream as it happens. Now, these people can be really, really invaluable to you. They can provide you with links if something is happening. For example, they can give you phone numbers to contact lawyers if you see arrests happening. They're also like another pair of eyes, because when you're filming yourself, you don't always see exactly what's happening because you're like looking through that lens, but they might be able to see something that you can't see, and they're able to say to you, like, look over there, so-and-so's done this, or whatever it might be. It's really, to me, it's one of the most important things about live streaming is that interaction that you have with people that aren't physically there with you, because they can help you. They can help with phoning police stations. They can help with getting support and all kinds of things. Very essential.
And also, information, and sometimes they can have some very good pertinent questions that can be really useful to have on the spot, which does make it incredibly different from most of the other ways people are used to getting their real information. And also
I was just going to say, it is definitely a new way of putting our information out. It's not like videoing at all. You video something, you go home, you can edit it down, you can take a few bits out, you can add a nice bit of music to it. That's perfect. That's absolutely great. But live streamed, a whole new thing. And never forget that a lot of the people that aren't actually physically with you, that are sitting at home for whatever reason, a lot of these people totally support what you're doing. You get the occasional troll that might come in and start trying to stir things up, but at the end of the day, that's up to you to ignore that. And again, it means that you're making a difference if you've got a troll. So
that's for sure.
Yeah.
And with that, the interactions that you have with the people who are, I guess, aren't able to be there with you, but are interested in watching the live streaming that you're doing. There's also quite a useful part that they can play in terms of using the contacts they have to, I guess, make sure that live stream goes to as many interested people as possible. I know the Occupy News Network and some other organisations work quite hard with those, because commercial media has huge budgets for commercial airtime where they can plug their shows and what's going on. And being an organic movement from the ground upwards, that's quite a valuable part that people can play to let people know what's going on. There are a number of live streamers, and you mostly use Bambuser. Is that the application that you use for live streaming?
I use Bambuser. I find it easy. A lot of streamers feel the same way about it, but there are other platforms. There's Ustream, and there's also livestream.com. I think if you find something, for me I've found something, it works, so I'm not going to change it. Obviously it depends on what phone you've got. Obviously the better phone you've got, I guess, the better quality you get, but that's not always applicable, and quite often you might not get a particularly good audio for whatever reason, but the fact that you're getting a visual on it is, as I say, it can be used as evidence. And as I said earlier, I'm pretty sure it's coming back to me now. I'm pretty sure it was Barton Moss that they did use some live stream footage. And what I would like to say, if you don't mind, I'd just like to put a little bit of promotion out there for Global Occupy News Network. I can't think of the website address off the top of my head, but I will post it somewhere later on. Global Occupy News Network are an amazing group of people that work 24 days a week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to put out alternative news, and I do believe that they're restreaming this show on there tonight. So, and they have done on many weeks previously. It's to them, it's all about getting news out to people that we wouldn't ordinarily hear. And these are all tools that can be used in live streaming. You get your contacts, you pass your links on, so then you're not only are you streaming it live, someone else is restreaming you with more viewers. And at the end of the day, we can only reach out to as many people as we can at one time, but the more platforms we've got, the better.
And of course, the more real and live and kicking on the ground that message is. And I know you and I work together to raise awareness of Workfare, and we were able to put some of the awareness raising that we were doing out on video, and that helped a lot of people. Just not even if you boycott, if you just don't shop there today. It sends a message that actually that's a practice you don't like them doing. And if you can hit an acupuncture point, often with commercial organisations, it's in the bank balance. Then with that, I think there were 3 or 4 protests the first week. There were a dozen or so the second. There were 30 the third week. And I think there were 57 planned for the following week before the government pulled a large chunk of that programme, renamed it and tried it again. But that type of awareness, because people can see people standing up and doing it and having fun and being able to record that. So, I think with live streaming, that encourages people to do what you've done and say, there's interesting things going on in my community. I'm going to whip out my camera, my live streaming phone, and share it with people who may be interested. And I think from what you're saying, groups like the Global Occupy News Network, who do a great job of harnessing the interesting things that are going on in the community and bringing them to a wider audience as possible. And do you think that is having an effect on the mainstream media where we came in earlier today?
Well, I don't really know. The way I look at things now, I'm getting a bit older, and the way I look at things, I haven't got much faith in the mainstream media. And the more people I speak to these days, neither have they. There's more and more people these days that are saying, I don't bother reading the papers. I can't be bothered to watch the news anymore. Now, to me, that's a good sign, because that means that a huge amount of the population are starting to actually realise that we've had the wool pulled over our eyes for many, many years. Converting people to alternative media, I think, is going to be a hard thing, but I don't think it's going to be as hard as what we necessarily need to make it. I think, if you download a live stream app to your phone and you go out, wherever you go, and you just live stream something that you see, whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is, someone will watch it. Somebody, you can guarantee somebody will watch that, and they might actually find that interesting, and they might comment on what you're streaming. And, use it as just something that we can do with our lives. It's something else that we can add to our lives. Obviously, I've used it more in like a protest setting, but I have also streamed other occasions. My mum's birthday, for one. A friend of mine, she ran a dance school, and they did a lovely, the kids did a lovely dance about love and hate, and there's all sorts of things you can live stream.
So yes, it's a great tool, and one that obviously the more you practice with it, the more applications you see for it, and hopefully the easier it gets. Is that what you found in your experience?
It definitely gets easier. The more you do it, it definitely gets easier. There's certain things I think that you learn as you go along, like trying to keep the camera still and not rushing around from one part to another to try and fit everything in. Trying to keep focused on one place is always quite good. But one thing, as I say, I think the most important thing about the live streaming is the interaction with people that aren't actually physically there with you, because they can help you. They are your eyes and ears.
Yeah, and it's also great if you've got interactions going on the ground as well. Some of those can be quite positive. For example, there are many people who go out with free hug signs just to bring people positivity. Sometimes people will use street art as a way of raising awareness on one particular issue or another, and have a lot of fun while they're doing that. And that can again be a nice way of interacting and sharing that fun to an even wider area of people.
I mean, for me, I think you have to have fun in your life, right? If you don't have fun in your life, you become some boring old Bart, and none of us want that to happen. Sorry, oops. But, whatever you're doing, you have to sort of make a nice time of it, And I've been to protests where there's been some really horrible policemen, and all I can think is that they're not really enjoying their job very much. Because when you actually talk to them and try and get down onto a humane level with them, and just talk to them not as they're a police officer and I'm me, as just a human to human, they're not bad people. I know some people are going to shoot me down for that, but they're not really bad people, And a lot of cops would actually rather be doing a proper job than out there. At protests, sort of trying to sort it out, and that is purely my opinion.
It is interesting because sometimes with things like the flashing blue sirens, the flashing blue lights, and the ear-splitting sirens, the uniform, sometimes with all that equipment, it can be quite intimidating sometimes, especially if they look like they've come tooled for crowd control. Can
I just jump in? I was just going to say,
since when you first done that and been confronted by that, to a few years down the line where you actually that's not quite so unusual because you've been live streaming and doing that. How do you think that's changed your perspective?
I've seen over the last couple of years the police becoming more and more violent. They are. It worries me. I'm not a young person anymore. I'm a middle-aged lady. It worries me to see how police are willing to treat pensioners, how they're willing to treat children, how they're willing to treat just about every member of society. It worries me a lot. I've got several friends in America that sort of say to me almost, we've got guns over here, it's much, much worse. And I just think to myself, God, I really hope that we never, ever get to that situation that America is in, where we are allowing guns, because it would just be awful. I just couldn't even imagine what it would be like. Police nowadays that I can tell you an incident that happened to myself, where I was arrested for 1.3 grams of cannabis resin, herbal cannabis. And at that arrest, I was brutally handcuffed. My son was thrown to the floor. All because he was really worried about Mum getting arrested. They threatened to pepper spray him, and I was just thinking when that happened, fortunately I'm quite a calm person, and I tried to calm the situation down, but it wasn't actually us that were out of control, it was them that were out of control. And yeah, that does worry me. It worries me a lot. I fear for the safety of our live streamers. Several live streamers in America have been quite brutally arrested, and I know here as well we've had it. So
I was going to say, live streaming is most definitely a non-violent act, and as is possession of a gram and a fraction of plant material. And when you have a non-violent situation and you have police officers willing to utilise violence and aggression, going about the course of their so-called job at that time, it can be one of those things where hopefully a camera where transparency can calm a situation down, and with the other side, I guess, of live streaming is, I guess, the keyboard activism side of the equation. Some people can't necessarily get out to places that they go to. Do you think that that is a growing part of the community as well?
I think it's a huge part of the community. I always have done. I think basically since Occupy started, so again, going back to 2011, that was how I found out about Occupy, was online. And there were a huge amount of people really doing as much as they possibly could to try and help Occupy, to try and help all the different camps, to try and make sure that the live streamers got some sort of airtime, if you like, because no one else was showing it. And, people that, I hate the term keyboard warrior, but, it does get bandied around quite a lot. Keyboard activist, to me, is definitely the correct term, because I know an awful lot of people that can no longer, for one reason or another, be out there on the street, whether it be that they've got children, whether they're disabled, whether they're old, that, we've all got our reasons. I know an awful lot of people that spend an awful lot of their day trying to spread the real news around. And to me, that's half of what this is all about. As I said earlier, I've lost all faith in media over the years. It's been probably 10 years since I ever bought a newspaper. I refuse to. I probably watch and listen to the BBC just to see what they're going on about,
I'm going to have to watch you, using language like that on Dark City Radio. We're usually pretty tolerant of most things, but not that kind. We like freedom of speech and real news. And of course, you're entirely correct. The people behind live streamers, the people behind the Bunker Show, the people who are behind Dark City Radio, the people behind independent producers of content, have a vital part to play with that. And also, the people who get out there and inspire people. And for myself, seeing you get up and doing things, if there are things that you've never done before and you think that can be done, then that for me is a great inspiration. And thank you very much for that, Sarah. But how about the people who you've met and who inspire you?
Wow, God, I'm inspired by so many people. My kids have always inspired me. They've always kept me going. There's always been a reason to keep going and, fighting for my kids and fighting to make sure that they get what they deserve in life. Now I've got a granddaughter, so she's a total inspiration to me. But, oh God, Chunky Mark. I met Chunky Mark up at Borkham a couple of years ago. And I'd always liked him. I'd always thought what a great artist he was, and how he was so spot on with what he said and everything. And then I met him, and
yeah, I was with you. I remember.
Do you remember, Helen? He's just such a lovely, lovely bloke.
Very gentle and humble.
Really, really gentle, real lovely guy. He's always been quite inspirational to me, because I like the way that he says what he thinks, And I think, we, as a society, we've all become a bit, we better not say that because it might upset so-and-so, and we better be careful about, what we read and what we do. And so I've always admired him. Sorry, I'm waffling again. Who else has inspired me?
I was going to say his ability to use humour to make really, sometimes unpalatable subjects able to be brought on the agenda is really, really.
It really is. I do admire him, and he's still a struggling artist, and he's brilliant, and that's why I love him. I think. Tony Benn. I met Tony Benn very briefly, admittedly. A couple of years ago at the People's Assembly conference in London, and he put his arm around me. I said, can I have my photo taken with you, Mr. Benn? He said, yes, my dear. He said, have you just been in at that meeting? And I said, yeah. And he said, what did you think? And I said, I thought you were brilliant. And he gave me a big hug, and I got a lovely photo with him. He was inspirational before I ever met him. I'd always agreed with Tony Benn and his way of thinking. And one other person who's been inspirational to me, who I must get in really quickly, is Mr. Tim Loughton, MP for Shoreham and East Worthing. And he's actually inspired me so much to fight against the Tories.
Wow, that's quite, because he's a Conservative Member of Parliament.
Yeah, like I say, he's inspired me so much to keep fighting against them. Every time he opens his mouth, everything he says, it just makes me think I am never ever going to agree with you one bit, and I just keep fighting against Tories. Tories have created austerity. Austerity doesn't work, and people are slowly realising it. Austerity is starting to hit every sector of society. People aren't happy. Andy's done something horrible to a pig, so I hear.
But I think in a way it's the conditions that we're existing in now, where some really good stuff starts sprouting. Exactly what we've been talking about today. Like the live stream stuff. And I think that's one of the joys of the live streaming, is it not only captures moments of controversy, but also moments of inspiration.
I mean, like I say, I'm inspired by people that are so-called famous, I suppose. Russell Brand is another guy. I met Russell Brand, and I met him up in London a couple of years ago on November the 5th. And he was, one minute I was just standing there, and then I looked round, and there was Russell Brand. And I went over and I shook his hand, and I said, hello, Russell, welcome to the revolution. And he looked like a poor little scared little boy, and I felt like I wanted to give him a big hug. So I did. Had a lovely photo with him. And, at the end of the day, people inspire me for all manner of reasons, right?
Yeah, and him being a new kid on the block, and, of course, anonymous, not having any leaders at all, it must have been an interesting learning curve for him. And, hopefully encourage other people to get introduced, and then, go past Russell Brand to the people who, bring forward the information, and who can really make the who do the investigative work, who do the real stuff on the ground, as opposed to bring along the media bandwagon.
Of course, there'll always be people that jump on that bandwagon. They always will. But I know it's a cliche, but an Occupy saying we are all the 99%, and we are. And we might not always like people, we might not always agree with what everyone says, but at the end of the day, for humanity's sake, I think we all have to stick together. We all have to help one another. And I think something that you asked me earlier was, why do I do what I do? Yes. And it is because I truly believe that we are here on Earth for a very short time. Our lifespan isn't long. And if we go through life being selfish, then I don't think we end up with much. If we go through our lives and we help people in any way, shape or form that we can, then I think we've achieved what our life is here for.
And one thing that I was, the November the 5th with the Anonymous you mentioned earlier, where anybody can go and they can make their feelings known with, to a certain degree, a certain amount of anonymity. And one of the things which has surprised me about the November the 5th is the sheer wide range of people who are feeling like they've had enough, but yet maybe don't feel confident enough to actually get out there and take a mask off and be very open and vocal about what they do. Sometimes, again, because of family or work or for other reasons. But do you think that sort of November the 5th kind of action or statement or art even, do you think that has a place in expressing people expressing themselves?
Yeah, I definitely do, definitely, because like you say, there are a lot of people, for whatever reason, they want to go out and make their feelings known. They want to go out on the street and join in a protest, but for whatever reason, they are scared to show their face. And I think it's very difficult, for people to actually express themselves. So yeah, and I've seen over the years, the rise in the numbers at the November the 5th march. So yes, I definitely think it has its place. I'd like to see it with a little tiny bit more structure, but that's probably just because I'm getting old now. And I can't be walking around the streets for miles and miles and miles. But apart from that, yeah, without a doubt, it has its place.
Well, it's interesting in terms of structure because a number of years ago, spontaneously went to Buckingham Palace, the BBC last year. So it would be interesting to see, maybe more protests focused at maybe where some of the bankers and some of the crooks are really doing their business.
That would be very good. I would be very up for that.
Well,
we're coming towards the end, Sarah. I just want to say thank you for coming and sharing your experience. I've had lots of opportunities to see you at work, and I know how determined and reliable you are, and what an asset you are to have on a team. And I also know what a great mum you are and grandma now. So, the way you manage your life and not reach burnout and know your limits and do what you can is impressive. And thanks for sharing it with us.
Oh, Helen, thank you. Thank you, my love. I'm so happy to know you. Thank you.
And me, you.
And, also help overactive people avoid burnout and tell them when to take a day off, which is a thank you that I must give you, Sarah, because it is important for people to take time out, regardless of what's going on in the world, and make sure that they're taking care of themselves and what's going on in their world.
Without a doubt, and that's one thing I would say. Occupy showed that to me, and still does, because Occupy might not be active anymore, but there's still a lot of occupiers that are active, if you know what I mean. You have to take time out, otherwise you just become cranky, and when you're cranky, you're no real good to anybody. So just sit back, chill out a bit, I don't know, do whatever makes you happy, go down the beach, go for a bike ride, do whatever, and keep fighting, always keep fighting.
And it's reassuring to know that, though the Occupy banner isn't so prominent as it once was, that actually people who met and formed networks in there, very much like Ian Crane has mentioned with the fracking, that take away that decentralized control that sometimes manipulates groups and keep them local and community-based, and with people who get up and really take action. Then that can apply the change that makes the difference.
No, I totally agree, Fab, and I think you've proved that tonight, Sarah. And yeah, it'd be really nice to meet you at one of these future events.
And there's lots of support in the chat room for you, Sarah. People have really enjoyed the show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Just thank you very much, and keep it real, and keep occupying, and act local and think global.
And thank you to Dark City Radio for having us on the air.